So it is time for 53-man roster projections, and today we're diving into the 5 biggest surprises of my Cowboys predictions, including some movement at running back and a drafted rookie being cut. Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Mauricio Rodriguez here at A to Z Sports Dallas. Let me tell you something. I love 53-man roster projections. I did one right after the NFL draft. I did one going into minicamp, which is the one that we're going to look at today. And then I'm probably going to have one next week after minicamp and before training camp. But we don't have time to go through the entire 53-man roster projection. So if you want to check that out, it's in the description below. What we will cover is the 5 biggest surprises from my projection. And coming in at number 1, I've got Damone Clark making the roster. That might not be a surprise for you, but it is one to me, because even when the Cowboys were hit with the injury bug at linebacker in 2024, Clark couldn't get on the field. Mike Zimmer absolutely benched him, and it didn't seem like he wanted to play him at all last season. Going into 2025, though, Damone Clark seems to be in a good spot with the defensive coaching staff. Brian Schottenheimer described his relationship to linebackers coach Dave Bergonzi as incredible. And really, with Marvin Overshown definitely starting the season in injured reserve, it's going to be easier than it looks like for Clark to make the 53. So that is going to be one of my surprises. At number 2, I've got the fact that the Cowboys are only carrying 2 quarterbacks on their roster. Over the last few years, they've done 3 of them every single time. I just don't think you've got the players to justify that this offseason. You've obviously got Dak Prescott, and last season, sure, you had this weird situation where you wanted to carry Trey Lance because he could develop and he had this upside that you wanted to bet on. Plus, you didn't really want to go off that trade and be like, yeah, I gave up a 4th rounder for a player that I cut. The Cowboys would never do that. And then you had Cooper Rush, who was more, quote unquote, game day ready, who was more of a safe bet for the Cowboys. This time around, though, sure, you've still got a developmental player in Joe Milton, but I just don't know that Will Grier is that game ready backup that knows the scheme so well like Cooper Rush did for the Cowboys to justify carrying 3 quarterbacks. I think the most likely outcome is the Cowboys try to sneak Will Grier into the practice squad. And if anything, they call him up every once in a while. Number 3 on the list, I've got some tough cuts across the offensive line. Among the cuts that I project for the Cowboys are TJ Voss and free agent signings Rob Jones and Hakeem Adeniji. It is very weird for teams to cut multiple free agents they signed that March. But the Cowboys picked 2 guards in the NFL draft, and they signed 3 players that could play offensive line. So I just think even though TJ Voss is this promising young player on the roster with a new coaching staff for Dallas, I'm not sure he's going to make the cut. I have him as a projected cut right now. Another potential surprise for many people is I've got Paris Campbell being released, and I mention it as a surprise because, again, it is one of the few free agent signings the Cowboys made. It is a former 2nd-round draft pick. It is somebody with talent and with experience. The thing is, though, I see Campbell as this insurance policy that the Cowboys got in case they couldn't land a big-name wide receiver like George Pickens. But now that they have CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, and even Jalen Tolbert and Jonathan Mingo, I think you kind of go younger at the position when it comes to depth. So I think players like Ryan Flournoy, who I've got on my 53, Jalen Brooks, who missed the cut on my 53, I think those players with upside are likelier to make the roster than Campbell now that the Cowboys already have enough experience in the room. And last but not least, this is the biggest surprise perhaps in my roster projection. I've got Miles Sanders surviving the cut. Now, the reason why I've got Sanders making it as a surprise is that in the last couple of years, the Cowboys have brought in one veteran with a big name that has produced elsewhere in the past that just hasn't made the team. Royce Freeman last season. 2 years ago, it was Ronald Jones. And the Cowboys didn't keep any of those. And right after the NFL draft, when the Cowboys picked Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa, I thought Sanders was going in that direction, and I cut him in my initial 53-man roster projection. But after OTAs, Brian Schottenheimer praised Sanders in a big way. He talked about how he was a complete back and that he saw him as a big-time player for the Cowboys. And he talked about his versatility. So as of this moment, yes, I think Sanders makes the team, which would in turn mean that the Cowboys cut a draft pick because I would have Phil Maffa going out of the roster in that scenario. You can check out the full roster over at atozsports.com, and I look forward to seeing your takes in the comments.